The most dangerous moment in the life of an empath is not betrayal. It is realizing that you can no longer forgive as before. Something inside him falls silent. The need to understand everything disappears. The will to justify the unjustifiable loses strength, and his soul refuses to pay the price of peace for others. Carl Jung would understand this moment, not as a moral failure, but as the beginning of a necessary rupture. For Jung, what consciousness rejects does not disappear. It descends into the shadows, gathers strength, and waits for the moment when it can no longer remain hidden. For years, the empath may believe that his greatest gift is to forgive. He endures, welcomes, understands, absorbs. He listens to old excuses, accepts promises that are never fulfilled, and feels the pain of those who hurt him. He says that everything is fine when it is not. I smiled to avoid conflict. He is silent so as not to appear cruel. And while preserving the appearance of harmony, something essential begins to disappear within it. Jung taught that no one becomes whole by cultivating only what he considers luminous. Transformation requires an encounter with what has been repressed, denied, or condemned. For the empath, this shadow may contain the very thing he has spent his life trying to avoid: anger, firmness, healthy selfishness, self-desire, instinct for self-preservation, and the ability to say no. What happens when these forces, held underground in the psyche, begin to rise? It is at this point that forgiveness reveals its most complex face. Not all forgiveness is born of love. Sometimes it is born of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as someone bad, fear of provoking the anger of the other. The empath might call this compassion, but Jung would ask, what is the real motivation hidden behind this virtue? If you forgive because you fear losing someone, is it still conscious forgiveness or just survival? Many empaths learned early on that they would be loved as long as they were easygoing. His sensitivity was valued when he served others, but he became uncomfortable when he demanded protection for himself. Thus, they built a persona, the person who is understanding, patient, and always ready to offer another chance. Jung called the social mask used to occupy a place in the world a persona. The danger begins when it becomes an identity. The empath starts to confuse his essence with his function. He no longer knows where compassion ends and submission begins. And the more you try to be light to everyone, the more parts of yourself are thrown into darkness. But the shadow does not accept being exiled forever. There comes a time when something breaks the balance. It could be a new lie, a betrayal, a cruel word, a manipulation so evident that it can no longer be rationalized. The empath looks at the situation and feels a different reaction. There is no longer the immediate impulse to save. A silent, deep, almost sacred anger arises. This anger is frightening because it contradicts the image he has created of himself. Am I becoming cold? Am I losing my goodness? These questions may seem like signs of spiritual falling, but Jung would point in another direction. Maybe it's not your light that's fading. Perhaps it is its shadow requiring integration. Anger, in this context, does not arise to destroy. It appears to inform, shows where a boundary has been breached. It reveals where the individual abandoned himself to maintain a bond. He exposes how many times he turned his own pain into silence to preserve someone who would never do the same for him. The shadow speaks through this indignation because consciousness has refused to listen for too long. And then the question that changes everything appears. Is this really mine to carry? This question has the force of a symbolic cut. It separates self from other, compassion from fusion, love from compulsive sacrifice. For the first time, the empath realizes that feeling someone's pain does not mean having an obligation to solve it. Understanding a wound does not mean accepting the aggression that is born from it. Acknowledging the suffering of a narcissist or manipulator does not require offering unlimited access to the soul. It is here that Jung brings us closer to individuation. Becoming what you are requires removing projections, abandoning roles, and reclaiming sacrificed parts of your personality to gain acceptance. For the empath, Individuation begins when he ceases to exist only as a response to the needs of others. But this change comes at a price. When he stops absorbing guilt, some people feel rejected. When he stops justifying destructive behavior, others claim that he has changed. And perhaps they are right. It is changing, but not in the direction you imagine. The empath begins to draw his energy from relationships built on self-abandonment. This shakes the system around it. People used to his availability notice that something has changed. The old access is no longer guaranteed. Automatic forgiveness disappears. The mask of the benevolent empath begins to crack, and the first big revelation emerges. Some people didn't love their essence. They loved the version of him who never said no. They loved his tolerance, his availability, his silence, his ability to forgive even before receiving true reparation. When that version begins to die, the bond is put to the test. Jung might have said that every transformation disturbs that which depended on our unconsciousness, and the empath is about to find out in the most painful way possible. Because when he stops feeding the old roles, it's not just his own masks that start to fall off. The masks of others also begin to move, and what appears behind them can forever change the way he understands love, loyalty, and forgiveness. There is a moment when the empath realizes that the people around him have not suddenly changed. What has changed is his ability to see. What seemed careful begins to reveal demand. What seemed like affection shows dependence, and what seemed like regret often reveals only fear of losing access. Carl Jung saw this kind of change as a shift in consciousness. When the persona weakens, the individual stops interpreting the world only through the role he has learned to play. Imagine a common situation. Someone sends a message after days of silence, not to know how you're doing, but because they need help. You answer. The conversation ends as soon as the need is resolved. At another point, someone crosses a line, apologizes, promises that they understood, and, a few days later, repeats the same behavior. Before, the empath saw each episode in isolation. Now he begins to perceive a sequence. The transformation becomes visible when the energy stops automatically flowing outward. The empath remains sensitive, but no longer reacts to each other's emotion as if it were an inevitable call. If someone is sad, he feels it. But a new question arises before action. Do I really need to solve this? For Jung, this separation between the self and the other is essential. Without it, there is no individuation, only fusion. And fusion can feel like love when, in fact, it is loss of identity. The empath, who for years has noticed the slightest discomfort of all, begins, for the first time, to perceive his own tiredness. Jung would call this rupture the weakening of the persona. The mask of the ever-understanding person begins to fall. This happens in small gestures. The empath refuses a favor when he is tired. He says that an attitude hurt him without softening every word. He doesn't apologize for needing space. A friend asks why you are distant. A family member says you got weird. Someone who has never respected your boundaries claims that you are cold. And the empath feels the old guilt trying to return. Maybe I'm exaggerating. Maybe I should go back to the way I was before. After a fight comes a flood of compliments. After a betrayal, an intense statement emerges. After a breakaway, grandiose promises appear. The person seems transformed just when he feels that he can lose the bond. For a few days, everything changes. There is attention, affection, and perfect words. The empath feels hope. Then the pattern returns. The same criticism, the same disrespect, the same reversal of blame. Jung wrote about projection as one of the great mechanisms of the unconscious. Often, we do not see the other as they are, but as our own inner structure allows us to imagine them. The empath, because he feels remorse when he hurts someone, presupposes remorse in others. Because he values honesty, he believes that sincere words reveal sincere intentions. But consciousness begins to withdraw these projections. The empath starts to observe less the speech and more the repetition. If someone apologizes, they watch what happens next. If you say that you have changed, You wait to see if the behavior has changed. If he says he loves, he asks if this love also respects limits, distance, and autonomy. When the empath stops filling in the gaps with hope, some people become easier to understand. The manipulator no longer needs to be deciphered by words. His standard speaks for him. The narcissist does not need to confess his intentions. His reaction to a limit reveals more than any speech. But Jung would not reduce the human psyche to simple categories. Not every person who reacts badly to a boundary is manipulative. True discernment requires observing standards, context, and accountability. This phase is not about condemning everyone. It's about learning to see, seeing without idealizing, feel without getting lost, understand without surrendering automatically. It is precisely in this area that an old weapon begins to be used more intensely: guilt. When the compliment no longer works and the promise no longer convinces, some people resort to the empath's most sensitive point, his need not to hurt anyone. Then familiar phrases emerge. "You've changed. I never expected that from you. After all I've done for you." The blow is profound because these words directly hit the old persona. For years, being considered good was part of his emotional security. Now, to preserve a boundary, he may have to endure being seen as cruel by someone who benefited from his lack of boundaries. Jung would understand this conflict as proof of individuation. Becoming whole requires enduring the tension between what others expect and what the soul recognizes as true. And a new question appears: am I really hurting someone or just letting go of myself? The empath begins to understand that saying no is not violence, walking away is not revenge, demanding respect is not selfish. Turning down a new chance may just be acknowledging that the previous one has already revealed everything that needed to be seen. Guilt still appears, but it no longer finds the same ground. Something has strengthened beneath the old mask. A forgotten part of the psyche no longer accepts being sacrificed in the name of harmony. When guilt begins to lose its hold, something even older awakens in the depths of the empath. It's not coldness. It's not cruelty. It's the anger he spent his whole life trying to hide. And when that anger comes to the surface, it won't just come to remember who hurt you. He will come to reveal all the places where he himself has abandoned himself. There is an anger that does not explode. She does not scream or seek revenge. It just settles in the body as a truth that is impossible to ignore. The empath feels this strength after years of trying to be understanding and realizes that the peace he has preserved has cost him dearly. Carl Jung would see this instant as the shadow returning to consciousness. For years, the empath confused anger with cruelty. He learned that good people forgive quickly and that maturity means remaining calm in the face of any provocation. He felt the wound and soon looked for an explanation for who hurt him. Jung understood that the psyche seeks compensation. The more one obliges oneself to represent only one virtue, the more strength one gives to the repressed pole. The more the empath tries to be only light, the more energy accumulates in the shadow. When this energy returns, it can arrive as a messenger, pointing to what consciousness insisted on calling normal. But what if that anger doesn't want to destroy anyone? What if she's trying to stop you from continuing to destroy yourself? The empath begins to revisit old episodes with different eyes. A small conversation takes on new meaning. A repeated joke reveals contempt. A promise that seemed like hope now seems part of a cycle. This is where guilt begins to lose its grip. Before, it was enough for someone to say, "You changed," for the empath to retreat. Now he observes who is speaking. Does this person miss your presence or the access they had? Are you suffering from distance or loss of control? Some bonds depended on the fault of the empath to continue functioning. While he took over everyone's well-being, certain people didn't need to change. How many relationships would survive if you stopped feeling guilty about protecting your own peace? How many people would remain close without unlimited access to his goodness? When this perception is consolidated, a silent selection begins. Some relationships move away. Others go into crisis. There are those who dramatize or make promises. The empath discovers that the limit does not destroy healthy relationships. It destroys the illusion of relationships that depended on the absence of limits. Authentic connections react differently. Mature people may get frustrated and disagree, but they talk and take responsibility. The empath stops measuring love by intensity and begins to measure by reciprocity. Jung understood the true encounter as something transformative. An unexpected loneliness then arises. Some messages stop coming. Certain invitations disappear. People who seemed indispensable reveal that they were more connected to the empath's function than to the person he was. What if this emptiness is not absence, but recovered territory? What if some losses are the way in which the psyche gives back space to the self? With less external noise, the empath recognizes patterns accurately. He notices the sequence: transgression, shock, apology, intense approach, forgiveness, and repetition. He notices how compliments arose when someone feared losing access, and how crises appeared when he tried to move away. Jung drew attention to the danger of projection. The empath often projects his or her own integrity onto others because he feels remorse and tries to learn from his mistakes. He assumes that others work the same way. Awakening breaks this fantasy. Discernment does not mean being suspicious of everyone. It means observing without idealizing. Not all failure is manipulation, but when the same behavior returns after countless conversations, the repetition ceases to be an accident and becomes information. How many times have you called hope what was just resistance to accepting what was already evident? How many times has your intuition realized the truth before your mind was ready to admit it? The empath's sensitivity changes function. Before, it was used to detect the needs of others. Now it starts to detect a coherence. He realizes the difference between words and attitudes, remorse, and fear of the consequences. Your sensitivity is transformed into discernment. Anger also changes. Once you've delivered your message, it can become a limit, decision, and distance. For Jung, integrating the shadow does not mean obeying it, but recognizing its energy and giving it a conscious form. Then something unexpected happens. He begins to respect parts of himself that he once condemned. He respects the impulse to say no, the tiredness and the intuition that has warned him so many times. The shadow no longer looks just darkness and reveals tools hidden there. But what if recognizing the patterns of others is only half the crossing? What if the hardest encounter begins when the empath realizes which part of themselves continued to participate in the cycle? Jung knew that the shadow contains not only what they have done to us, but also what we avoid recognizing about our own choices. The empath may have been hurt and manipulated, but he still needs to understand why he stayed when his intuition already knew the answer. It is not about guilt. It is about awareness. There is a difference between holding someone responsible for being hurt and investigating the internal mechanisms that made the repetition possible. It is this investigation that separates a rupture from a true individuation. The next mask may not be on the face of the narcissist or manipulator. It may be the image that the empath himself built to survive. The person who always needed to be good, always needed, and always ready to forgive. What if what he is about to discover about his own goodness is even deeper than anything he has discovered about others? The most difficult mask to pull off is not that of the handler. It is the one we use to survive without realizing it. When the empath reaches this point, he already recognizes patterns, perceives manipulation, and feels his own anger, but begins to distrust a deeper truth. Carl Jung leads us to this place where the question is no longer, "Why did they do this to me?" and becomes, "Why did a part of me stay so long inside this?" This change transforms the entire experience. The empath may have been injured or deceived. That doesn't go away. However, for Jung, true individuation requires more than identifying the shadow of others. It requires acknowledging your unconscious participation in the repeated cycles. Not to take responsibility for what he suffered, but to regain power over what can still change. Think of someone who always gets involved with emotionally unavailable people. The faces change, but the final feeling is almost identical. First comes intensity, then distance, confusion, and anxiety. The empath tries to understand and offer more until he realizes something disturbing. Maybe he wasn't just looking for love. Perhaps he was trying to mend an old wound through new people. Jung observed that the unconscious often repeats because it tries to make visible what has not yet been understood. It's like a play staged with different actors, while the psyche waits for us to finally recognize the script. How many seemingly distinct relationships were, in fact, the same story with another face. This realization opens the door to the encounter with the self. For Jung, the self is not just personality or strengthened ego. It is the totality of being, including the known and that which remains hidden. When the empath approaches this center, he perceives desires that he never allowed to exist, limits that he considered selfish, and needs that he always put last. At this stage, small situations take on a symbolic weight. A person walks into a store and notices that he always chooses what pleases others. Another receives an invitation and, for the first time, asks if she really wants to go. Someone hears criticism and realizes that they no longer feel the old urgency to explain themselves. For those who lived for approval, each gesture represents a rupture, and then a strange experience arises: emptiness. When the empath stops running to solve crises, there is time left. When it stops interpreting messages, there is silence. When it stops sustaining unbalanced relationships, there is room for it. At first, this space may seem lonely, but Jung could see it as psychic territory, returned to the true self. It is in this territory that the old persona begins to die in an evident way. The person who has always been kind discovers that he is also firm. The person who never complained realizes that he has an opinion. The person who accepted any plan begins to say, "I don't want to." And those who have become accustomed to the previous version may react as if they were facing a stranger. In the meantime, surprising events appear. A decades-long friendship ends because of a single limit. A family member who was once affectionate becomes aggressive in the face of a no. A person who swore they couldn't live without you quickly finds another source of attention. These situations are shocking because they reveal that certain bonds were sustained by invisible functions. But the opposite also occurs. Some relationships become stronger. People who truly love the empath don't run away when he changes. They ask, listen, and adjust. This reveals something decisive. Limits do not keep away those who want a relationship. They drive away those who want access without responsibility. At this point, Jung takes us even deeper. The empath begins to realize that his automatic forgiveness also possessed a shadow. Perhaps he would forgive to avoid abandonment. Perhaps he offered more than he could to remain indispensable. Perhaps he kept the role of savior because without someone to save, he did not know who he was. This discovery may hurt more than acknowledging a manipulator. It dismantles the image of absolute purity that the empath has built of himself. But Jung would not treat this as condemnation. Making a hidden motivation conscious is precisely what allows you to stop being governed by it. From then on, forgiveness changes meaning. It is no longer an automatic response and becomes a decision. The empath discovers that he can understand someone without giving back access. It can release resentment without rebuilding the bond. You can wish peace to a person and still keep your distance. This is the birth of conscious forgiveness. It does not erase the wound and does not demand forgetting. It recognizes what happened, preserves the truth, and prevents pain from continuing to command life. To integrate the shadow is not to pretend that nothing has happened. It is to remove from experience the power to secretly govern our choices. And then something starts to return. An energy that for years has been used to watch over the moods of others, avoid conflicts, and repair relationships begins to come back inward. The empath feels the desire to create, rest, learn, and reorganize their own life. It is as if a forgotten part of existence only hoped that he would stop sustaining the unsustainable. But this energy does not come back without consequence. When he returns, he begins to rebuild desires, priorities, relationships, and even the way the empath perceives his purpose. transformation is no longer just defense. It begins to become creation. And that's where Jung leads us to the next passage, the moment when the recovered strength ceases to serve only to survive and begins, finally, to build a whole life. When the energy returns to the empath, it does not return quietly. First, it appears as restlessness, the desire to reorganize habits, resume old projects, and recover hours previously consumed by the conflicts of others arises. Carl Jung would understand this movement as part of individuation. The psychic energy trapped in bonds, fears, and projections begins to look for a new center. At first, this change may seem selfish. The empath who spent nights solving other people's problems starts to hang up the phone earlier. Those who canceled their plans to help someone decide to keep a commitment to themselves. Those who accepted endless conversations learn to say, "Today, I can't." And something surprising happens. The world does not collapse. Jung believed that the psyche suffers when an essential part of the individual is sacrificed for too long. When energy is diverted to meet external expectations, personal dreams lose strength. Therefore, when the empath interrupts automatic forgiveness and unlimited availability, old desires return. The desire to create, change course, or simply rest without guilt may arise. But this recovery provokes an unexpected reaction. Some people try to bring it back to the old role. A family member creates a crisis when he starts something important. A friend shows up just on the day he decided to take care of himself. An ex-partner sends a nostalgic message when they feel like the distance is becoming definitive. Jung would say that groups also develop balance. In a family or relationship, each person occupies a role. When someone fails to fulfill the expected function, the entire system feels the impact. The empath, who always calmed conflicts and absorbed guilt, was part of this balance. It is then that a twist occurs. The empath discovers that some conflicts did not arise because he began to set boundaries. They have always existed. They were only hidden by their ability to absorb everything. The limit does not create rupture. It reveals the structure that was already cracked. This perception changes your view of relationships. Before, intensity meant depth. Now he observes consistency. Before, a declaration seemed like proof of love. Now he pays attention to his daily behavior. Before, an excuse was enough. Now he seeks responsibility, real change, and continued respect. The empath understands that love should not require loss of identity. Healthy relationships can have conflict, but they don't need submission to survive. A new skill then emerges, feeling without absorbing. Someone tells a pain and empathizes, and listens without turning it into a mission. A person cries, and he offers presence without promising to solve his life. A family member gets angry, and he doesn't change his position just to eliminate tension. For Jung, integrating opposites is a central task of psychic maturity. The empath needs to combine sensitivity and firmness, acceptance and discernment. If you try to be only gentle, you repress your strength. If it reacts by becoming completely cold, it transforms the wound into another mask. The real change is not to stop feeling. It is learning to stay in one's own center while feeling. The empath discovers that he can love someone and still say no. You can understand and not agree. You can forgive and not reopen the door. The more this balance is strengthened, the more the body seems to respond. The mind stops reviewing conversations for hours. The tension of waiting for the next crisis eases. The empath realizes how much of his tension came from constant surveillance. He needed to stop living as responsible for everyone's emotional stability. But there is a price to this freedom. When the old function disappears, a hidden question arises. Who am I when no one needs me? For years, being necessary has given the empath a sense of worth. Now he needs to build identity without depending on the dependence of others. This is where Jung brings us closer to the self again. The center of individuation is not to become isolated, but to develop a conscious relationship with one's own wholeness. The empath begins to find value in existing, not just serving. He creates because he wants to create. Rest because you need to. He chooses because something inside him recognizes meaning. This transformation breaks old patterns. The empath stops mediating all discussion and refuses responsibilities that are not his. Others realize that love doesn't have to mean silence or permanent sacrifice. Little by little, he grows closer to the wounded healer, someone who knows pain without being governed by it, able to help without getting lost, and guide without controlling. But there is one last trap. It is possible to learn to put limits on others and continue to wage war with yourself. It is possible to push away the manipulator, break the cycle, and rebuild life, but still carry shame for the choices of the past. How did I not realize it before? Why did I stay so long? Why did I come back? These questions arise when everything seems to be better. The empath may have ended the external bond and still keep the former aggressor alive within himself, now using his own voice to condemn every past decision. Jung knew that no individuation is complete as long as parts of one's own history remain exiled. The shadow does not contain only anger and strength. It also contains the version of ourselves that we feel ashamed to remember. And it is in front of this old version, still trapped in fear, that the empath will find the last portal of his transformation. Because the completion of this journey does not depend only on learning who should no longer enter your life. It depends on whether he will be able to welcome the person who once opened the door. In the end, the hardest person to forgive may never have been the one who hurt you. Maybe it was the version of you that stayed, believed, came back and tried one more time. Carl Jung would understand this encounter as one of the most profound stages of individuation. It is not enough to recognize the shadow of others. At some point, you need to look at your own history without contempt and say, I understand why you did what you did. The empath reaches this stage with tough questions. How did I not realize it before? Why did I accept it so much? Why have I forgiven again? Often, these questions hide judgment. It is as if today's consciousness condemns an old version that did not yet have the tools of today. For Jung, integration is not erasing the past. It is to take away from him the power to govern the present. Maybe you confused love with resistance. Perhaps he believed that being needed was the only way to be loved. Change begins when you stop asking, who hurt me? And start asking, what do I need to do to never abandon myself in this way again? In practice, this requires a pause. Before you forgive, wait. Don't respond just to eliminate tension. Notice what happens when the other person doesn't get immediate access. Words can be rehearsed. Repeated behaviors are harder to hide. Separate understanding from permission. You can understand someone's pain and still say no. You can have compassion and choose distance. Jung saw maturity as the integration of opposites. The empath does not have to choose between sensitivity and strength. Then, observe the patterns. Was the apology accompanied by a change? Was your limit respected? Does this person show up only when they need something? Do you come out of this relationship more clearly or with more confusion? But there's a hard truth. Some people will never offer you the closure you hoped for. They may never admit what they have done. Waiting for someone to acknowledge your truth can keep you stuck with the very person you tried to break free from. Conscious forgiveness begins when your peace ceases to depend on the conscience of the other. You can let go of resentment without declaring innocence. You can close a chapter without pretending that nothing happened. You can forgive and stay away. At this point, the empath approaches the archetype of the wounded healer. Jung understood that conscious wound can be transformed into wisdom. Those who have gone through their own darkness can recognize pain without being swallowed up by it. Apply this to relationships. Before you say yes, ask if you're choosing or just fearing someone's reaction. Before you apologize, ask if you really made a mistake. Before offering another chance, take note of whether there has been accountability and real change. Also, stop calling every departure a loss. Some distances are protection. Some endings are course corrections. People accustomed to the old empath may say that you have changed. Perhaps they are right. Individuation exists to bring you closer to your truth. Then comes self-forgiveness. It does not mean to say that all the choices of the past were correct. It means recognizing that you chose with the level of consciousness you had at that moment. The version that remained need not be humiliated by the version that awakened. It needs to be integrated. Jung would place the self at the center of this reconciliation. The self contains light and shadow, courage and fear, wisdom and error. Becoming whole does not mean eliminating the imperfect. It means to stop living divided against oneself. And the paradox appears. When the empath stops forgiving everyone automatically, he learns to forgive more deeply. Now, forgiveness is not born of the fear of losing. It is born from the freedom to choose. He can love without abandoning himself. This is the true awakening. Not to make the heart harder, but to make the conscience clearer. Shadow becomes discernment. Anger becomes information. The limit becomes respect for oneself. Perhaps the necessary step today is just to say a single no and endure the discomfort without going back. You don't have to transform your whole life at once. Individuation also happens by small decisions, repeated with awareness. Jung leaves us with a simple and difficult truth. Becoming who you really are requires letting go of that which depends on your self-abandonment. Some masks may fall off painfully, but losing an illusion can be the first price of freedom. You don't have to stop being an empath. You need to stop confusing empathy with disappearance. Your sensitivity remains a gift when it has limits. Your compassion continues to be strength when it is born of choice. Your forgiveness remains sacred when it is not used against you. When he automatically stops forgiving, he does not lose his light. He just fails to offer it to everyone while he remains alone in the darkness. The soul did not need to learn to love less. She needed to learn not to disappear while she loved. If this message found something in you that you were already trying to awaken, enjoy this video. Comment on what touched you the most, even anonymously if you prefer, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-knowledge, shadow, individuation, and transformation. Maybe the next step is not to understand anyone else. Maybe it's finally choosing yourself.